Hello, all. Welcome back. I'm so sorry that I forgot to post a video yesterday. This video will be a bit longer to make up for the lack of a video yesterday. But what we are going to do is we are going to continue reading The Wild Robot. I am currently sitting crisscross applesauce on the floor in my parents' house. You will see that I may or may not have grown up a Reds fan, and I don't know if you can see why. Um, Coincidentally, my parents are currently at the Reds game. So hopefully the weather cooperates with them. Hopefully the Reds bring home a win. And hopefully you enjoy this video as we continue to read our story. We ended with chapter 9, so we're going to start with chapter 10 today. Chapter 10, The Reminder. I should remind you, reader, that Roz had no idea how she had come to be on that island. She didn't know that she'd been built in a factory and then stored in a warehouse before crossing the ocean on a cargo ship. She didn't know that a hurricane had sunk the ship and left her crate floating on the waves for days until it finally washed ashore. She didn't know that she'd been accidentally activated by those curious sea otters. As the robot looked out at the island, it never even occurred to her that she might not belong here. As far as Roz knew, she was home. Chapter 11, The Robot Sleeps. Roz stood on the peak and watched the sun sink behind the ocean. She watched shadows slowly spread over the island and up the mountainside. She watched the stars come out, one by one, until the sky was filled with a million points of light. It was the first night of the robot's life. She activated her headlights, and suddenly bright shafts of light were beaming out from her eyes and illuminating the whole mountaintop. Too bright, so she dimmed them. Then she turned them off and sat in the darkness and listened to the chorus of nighttime chirps. After a while, our robot's computer brain decided it was a good time to conserve energy, so she sat and anchored her hands to the rocks. Her non-essential programs switched off, and then, in her own way, the robot slept. Chapter 12, The Storm. Roz felt safe up on the mountaintop, so she spent the next few days and nights perched on the peak. But everything changed one afternoon when a low-flying cloud crept up the mountain and Roz found herself surrounded by white. When the world faded back into view, she noticed more clouds floating south past the island. Then she heard a deep rumble behind her. The robot turned her head around and saw that the sky was filled with a swirling wall of darkness. Lights flickered here and there, more deep rumbles. A storm was approaching, and it wasn't just any storm. It was as fierce as the one that had sent the cargo ship to the ocean floor. The wind picked up and the first drops of rain tapped against the robot. It was time to go. Roz unclamped her hands and began sliding down the peak. Ooh, that's a scary bolt of lightning. Hot sparks flew from where her body scraped against the leaning slab of stone. As soon as her feet hit soil, she was off and running. The rain fell harder, the wind blew faster, the lightning flashed brighter, the thunder cracked louder. So much rainwater was falling that rushing rivers of runoff started springing up everywhere. Roz splashed down the mountain, searching through the gloom for any kind of shelter. But she had, but should, excuse me, let me try again. But she should have watched where she was going. Her heavy feet slipped and tripped, and she tumbled right into a mudslide. Our robot was helpless. The river of mud whisked her downhill, slamming her into rocks and dragging her through bushes and sweeping her straight toward a cliff. Mud was pouring off the cliff like a waterfall. Roz frantically clawed at the ground, grasping for anything she could hold on to. but the flow only carried her faster toward the edge. And just as she was about to plunge over the side, she came to a hard, sudden stop. Mud surged around her, spraying into her face and pinning her against some solid thing. She blindly felt with her hands and recognized the thick roots and trunk of a pine tree. In an instant, she was pulling herself into the branches. The wind whipped across the mountainside, and Roz heard the familiar thunk of pine cones pelting her body. But she didn't mind them this time. She was just happy to be safe from the mud flow. The robot locked her arms and legs around the tree and waited for the storm to blow over. Sounds pretty scary, especially if you've never experienced a storm before in your conscious life. Chapter 13, The Aftermath. Daybreak and the storm had passed, but the sounds of water were everywhere. The air was filled with dripping sounds of mountain runoff and the sloshing sounds of flooded streams. And then came a very different sound. It was the clanging sound made when a robot slips on a wet rock. There were quite a few clangs that morning. As Roz worked her way downhill, she scanned the aftermath of the storm. Giant mounds of mud and debris had formed below the cliffs. The island's central river had crested its banks and spilled into the nearby fields and forests. Some trees had been uprooted. Others were submerged, their upper branches barely poking above the floodwaters, their lower branches swarming with fish instead of birds. After such a storm, you might expect to see animal corpses scattered among all the devastation. But the animals seemed to have survived just fine. Somehow they had known the storm was coming, and they had found shelter long before it rolled in. Lowland creatures who had sought refuge on higher ground were waiting patiently for the water to recede. Deer were wading through the flooded fields. Beavers were busily collecting a trove of fallen branches. Geese honked in the sky before splashing down into a watery section of the forest. Clearly, the animals were experts in survival. Clearly, our robot was not. Roz was crusted with mud and grit, so she gave herself another good cleaning, but that only revealed her dents and scratches. They were really starting to add up. She hardly resembled the perfect robot who had appeared on the shore just a week earlier. The wilderness was taking a toll on poor Roz. So she felt something like relief when she spotted the quiet hole in the side of the mountain. It looked like a safe place for our robot. She stomped across the hillside and up to the cave, but never stopped to wonder what might be lurking within. Chapter 14, The Bears. 1 second. Okay. Roz stomped into the cave, and then she stomped right back out. "Please stay away," the robot said to the two bears, who were now nipping at her heels. You see, when Roz stomped into the cave, she accidentally woke a brother and sister bear from their morning nap, which is never a good idea. And to make matters worse, bears have an instinct that drives them to attack when a creature runs away, especially if the creature running away is a mysterious, sparkling monster. So as the startled bears watched Roz stomping out of their cave, they really had no choice at all. They simply had to take up the chase. Roz tried her best to outrun the bears. She leapt over rocks and wove through the trees and stomped across the mountainside at full speed. But the bears were young and strong and fast. And the robot still had so much to learn about moving through the wilderness. She never even saw the tree root. One moment she was stomping along, and the next she was flying through the air and thumping down onto a rotten log. Clumps of soft wood stuck to her side as she stood and faced her attackers. Wouldn't you be afraid if two bears were charging toward you? Of course you would. Everyone would. Even the robot felt something like fear. Roz was programmed to take care of herself. She was programmed to stay alive. You see it all? I love the illustrations in these books. They're so geometric. And as the robot watched those bears charging toward her, she knew her life was in serious danger. The bear slammed into Roz, knocking her against the trunk of a towering tree. Then one bear dove at her legs, and the other clawed at her chest. If only the robot had swung her fists or kicked her feet, she could have scared them off. One good bop in the nose would have sent them running. But the robot's programming would not allow her to be violent. Clearly, Roz was not designed to fight bears. Powerful jaws chomped her arms. Sharp claws slashed her face. A massive head rammed her chest. "Please stay away," said the robot. "Roar," said the sister bear. "Grrr," said the brother bear. And then the bears went in for the kill. But the robot had vanished. We're going to finish with one more chapter. Chapter 15, The Escape. Using all the strength in her legs, Roz jumped straight up high into the air and landed on a tree branch overhead. The tree shook with the sudden weight of the robot, and then thunk, thunk. Two pine cones bounced off Roz, and a moment later, thunk, thunk. The same pine cones bounced off of the bears below. The bears grunted with annoyance. This gave Roz an idea. The robot's programming stopped her from being violent, but nothing stopped her from being annoying. So Roz plucked pine cones from the nearby branches and lobbed them down at the bears. Thunk, 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 thunk. Each pine cone bounced off its target with annoying accuracy and whipped the young bears into a frenzy. "Roar," said the sister bear. "Grrr," said the brother bear. "I do not understand you bears," said the robot. Roz was about to unload a whole armful of annoying pine cones when a distant "roar" echoed through the forest. Back at the cave, the mother bear was calling for these two, and she did not sound happy. The young bears looked at each other. They knew they were in trouble. But before lumbering home, they glared up at Roz and snorted one last time. More than anything, they wanted to kill the robot. And just like I thought, that's where we're left for today. So you will get episodes every day this week. Yesterday was a fluke, so I apologize for not having a video out for you. After this video is posted, what I will do next is I am going to post an episode of The Wild Robot Escape. So if you are very familiar with the first book that I am reading currently, The Wild Robot, go ahead and check that out next. The Wild Robot Escapes is the second book in a trilogy of three books currently by Peter Brown. I hope you enjoyed today's read aloud. A little bit longer again because yesterday was I missed posting yesterday. So longer read aloud today. You'll get a normal length between 10 and 15 minutes tomorrow and the rest of the week. And I hope you have a great day. I hope you are safe and I hope you're having fun. Join me tomorrow for some more of The Wild Robot. Thank you for stopping by. See ya. Bye.